Black like me. Black like me. Black like me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, Black Like Me podcast listeners. Listen, I am so honored to introduce this segment that you're about to hear. You know, season 8 has really been about leadership. And I wanted to do an episode with someone who has really influenced me to think like a leader, going back to the late 60s when I was 6 years old in the first grade. Before moving to Wisconsin from Chicago, my first grade teacher was Alice E. Turner. I loved her. Everyone in my class was black. We lived on the west side of Chicago. Each week in class or each day, a student would have to stand up and say what or who they wanted to be when they grew up. And I stood up and said, I want to be the president of the United States. And she wrote on the board in cursive, Alexander will be the president of the United States. When she found out that I was moving to Wisconsin because my mom was coming here to start college, she said she would write me. And for the past 52 years, with a few lapses here and there, we have written, we now send video messages to stay in touch, and it's been 50 plus years. She loved students. She was an exquisite educator extraordinaire who saw all students. I remember doing science experiments in her class. I remember learning penmanship and how to write, and just felt like she opened the world to me and gave me the right start that I needed to move to a place like Madison, Wisconsin, where I would be one of 2 black students in my classroom for the rest of my educational career and studying the impact of slavery during the slave trade chapter every year. And so Eli from my podcast team, editor and producer, traveled with me to Evanston. And we just sat at our house and just asked questions about life, her thoughts about leadership, who influenced her, what influenced her. And I have to tell you, it's one of the highlights of my career. Not just of the summer, but of my career. This is a woman who is sacred to me, and I am so fortunate that she is still in the world. She'll be 103 Christmas of this year, and she still wears heels and dresses up in furs and all of these things. And so enjoy this episode. Please know that this is a very, very dear woman. I'm just one of the many people whose lives she touched, and she touched countless of folks. And all those folks have touched people. So lean into this. And please, if you're a teacher, please know that I appreciate you. And if you have a favorite teacher, share this episode with them. You're going to really enjoy this. So I'm sitting here in Evanston, Illinois, with my favorite school teacher. I've had a lot of teachers from Head Start through college through grad school, but I've never forgotten Mrs. Alice E. Turner. I drove to Evanston from Madison with my team today so I could sit here and talk with you. And Mrs. Turner is beautiful and 102 years old. Am I getting that right? You can't be 102 years old, Mrs. Turner.
Yes, I am.
And you'll be 103 this Christmas.
Right.
So, Mrs. Turner, first of all, I appreciate you and Miss Mona and Miss Deborah for letting me come down and talk with you. Remember when I found you about 10 years ago? I was in Evanston and I told a friend, my favorite teacher lives in Evanston, and I remembered your address.
I remember that.
Because you used to write me. We were pen pals.
Yeah.
Well, you used to write me. I mean, you were grown. I was a kid. We didn't call it pen pal. But we wrote each other, and I remember the address. But you couldn't let me in because your daughter said, don't let nobody in that house.
That's right.
But when I was talking with you, you said, are you the preacher? I couldn't believe that you remembered that I was a pastor because, you know, I was your student in 1969. So how first let me just start by saying, you look fantastic. How do you feel?
I feel fine.
You look fine. You know what, Mrs.
It's
Turner?
not me. It's the man that lives in me.
Come on now, yes ma'am, yes ma'am. Well, the man in you is looking good. The Lord is looking good in you, Mrs. Turner.
Thank you. God bless you.
So, Mrs. Turner, before we moved to Madison, I attended Delano School. I went to Head Start there. I must have been one of the first Head Start kids, some of the early Head Start kids. Mrs. Yeagle was my kindergarten teacher, but you were in first grade. And I know you can't remember all your students, but do you remember telling when you asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up and I had to stand up? What did I say I wanted to be?
You was holding on to your mother's hand and round like a little preschool thing, and I said, he's so mannish, he gonna be something. So I said, you're going to be the first black president of the United States.
And Mrs. Turner, not only did you say
that, I think you remember it because you danced around on the floor a little bit there.
You know what, I did remember it because you also wrote it on the chalkboard. And everyone else called me Alex, but you used to call me Alexander. You were the only adult in the world that called me Alexander. And you remember you writing on the board, Alexander is going to be the president of the United States. And that stuck with me. And so, teachers just have such an impact on students' lives, because you could have laughed at that. You could have said, oh, that's funny. That little boy ain't going to be nothing. But
no, you can see things in little children.
You could. Teachers can see things in children.
What is that?
That's just, so teachers, y'all can see things in children?
Oh, well, yeah, every child, you see something, they don't all see the same thing. You can see whether they're going to be, try to be something or do something. You can't help but to see it.
Yes.
From their reaction and their personality.
In your class, we used to have air raid drills. They don't have those anymore. That used to scare me so bad because I thought those planes were dropping bombs. Do you remember those air raid drills?
What you mean?
Like, we'd have these drills because I guess there was a threat of the Cold War, and so we would have fire drills, and we would have air raid drills.
Yeah, every month I think we had.
We did. We had to go stand in the closet or something.
Get their coats and their caps and get out when snow was knee deep. Everybody had been taught. Hurry up and get that cap and coat.
And get outside.
Get in that line.
That's
Don't look
right.
at nobody and talk to anybody.
Get in that line.
Yeah, get outside.
I remember one day, I don't expect you to know this, Mrs. Turner, because you had, so many students. But around Halloween, my mother sent me to school with a little pumpkin. And I was embarrassed because she said, take this to school so your teacher can carve it. And I, as a kid, I was thinking, my teacher's not going to carve this. So I had it down under my seat. And you walk down the aisle and you're like, Alexander, what's that? And I said, my mom sent a pumpkin to school. You went to the back of the class because there was a counter and a sink. You carved that pumpkin in that class with me. I could still remember my arm going in and pulling all the seeds out. I became a cool kid that day. I was embarrassed. You carved that pumpkin and set it up in that classroom. That was 52 years ago. I don't remember stuff. I don't forget stuff like that, Mrs. Turner. Does that sound like something your mother would do, Miss Mona?
Yes. It is definitely something she would do. She, she's surprising. She's surprising. Sometimes the thing that you don't think she's gonna do, that's what she's gonna do. Okay.
That is just that's just beautiful. Just to understand kids that way. I remember one other thing, and I'm going to ask you some questions, but I just remembered this. I don't know what the lesson was, but you taught us how to take a cup and put paper down in it, turn it upside down and put it in water and said that it wouldn't get wet. And I don't know what kind of science experiment that was in first grade, but to this day, every once in a while, I'll put paper up into a cup and put underneath the water, and the water never goes and gets the paper. Well, I don't know if she ever made you do that at home or if that sounds familiar, but it was.
I taught it.
You taught that?
Like
Yes.
Are you serious?
Yes, I taught that.
Mrs.
That
Turner.
sounds like her.
Mrs. Turner did that in our class, and so I moved to Madison in 1970. My mom wanted to go back to college, so she moved, or go to college. We moved to Madison, and I can remember one of my last days at Delano. You said, Alexander, give me your address when you move because I want to write you. Mm-hmm. Here's 2022. Now we don't write anymore. We leave messages on the computer. So now we send voice messages on the computer. But for 52 years, one way or another, you've been in touch with me, and I really appreciate it. So I just want to talk about you a little bit. I want to capture that on film and record it because I just think your life is so wonderful and extraordinary, and you've lived it out as your ministry. What made you want to become a school teacher?
Well, I've always loved children.
Mm-hmm.
My mother taught us to love children, and it just been my thing. Played with them, and we played school. It was in the country, and we'd get out under the bushes and things, and we'd have service. One of us would preach and one shout and get baptized and join the church and do all the things they did at church, you know.
So what did you like to do best,
That's
shout
fun.
or preach? Which one did you like to do? Did you like to shout or preach?
I
or
wasn't too much of a shouter like that. I was a reader. I read the Bible and tell them what the Bible said. They know me as the Bible. I love that word.
Yes, ma'am.
From beginning there.
And so now you studied at Lemoyne College,
Yeah.
Lane College, and Wilberforce.
Yeah.
And then in Chicago at the Teachers College.
Right.
So you prepared yourself thoroughly to teach. That's amazing. Do you remember any of your teachers growing up?
Yes.
Some of your favorite ones?
I had a teacher that almost took me from my parents. She wanted my parents to let her adopt me from a little girl, first grade, sitting in school. She'd come through the room and talk to the other teachers. She had always said, "You gonna be a teacher." I hadn't heard nobody say teacher, go to college, and I went home to ask my mama. The teacher keeps saying I'm gonna be a teacher. Mama said, "Go play."
Wow. How old were you when she said that?
I was about 6.
So that was about
Between 6 and 7.
about 1925?
I imagine.
About that, because I'm thinking, about that, wow. So that was your, right, about 27? Do you,
1927. They didn't go to school till they were 6 at that time.
okay. Do you remember that teacher's name?
Oh yeah, Nellie Roberts.
Nellie Roberts. Wow. That's so. And she told you that you were going to be that you're going to be a teacher when you grow up.
And she said, "You're going to college?" And I asked my mother. I said, "She keep on saying the college. What is that? The White House?" You know, I had never heard nothing about no White House. And Mama said, "Go play." You didn't heard nothing about it either, I don't think.
Wow. I love the fact that she put college in your mind.
Yeah, she
as
did.
as a young person. And so I love the pictures I saw earlier with you at Wilberforce, graduating from there. You must have had some great experiences at Wilberforce. Did you enjoy that school?
I enjoyed it, yeah.
Wow. What was
My
your favorite?
husband was a minister, and he was in the seminary, and I went to the university. I graduated cum laude from there.
You graduated cum laude from there.
It's in that book there.
Did you meet your husband at Wilberforce, or did you all know each other before that?
Yeah, we already married, and we had one son. I sang in the choir from the university.
Oh, you did?
I don't have no real voice, but it's people like to put me somewhere to do something.
So did you grow up in Ohio? Is that how you ended up going to Wilberforce, or no, you lived in Tennessee,
I
right?
grew up in the country. It's just called it. I grew up in what they call on the farm. We had chickens and geese and horses and cows, and my father made he baled hay.
Uh-huh.
He'd go out and cut up a lot of hay, and he and my brother would cut it, make it like a triangle, and put wire around it. I don't know. I think he's putting it away for the winter to feed the animals.
I think so.
The mules and the cows.
Was it hard for you, Mrs. Turner, to leave the farm in the country to go to college?
I was so glad to get away from there. I didn't know. I didn't know what to think. I really did. I said, this is not for me.
When you were growing up, were your school teachers black?
Yeah, all my teachers were black, mostly, until I started to get up after I graduated from high school and went into college.
Mm-hmm. Did some of your teachers go to church with you? Did you know them in the community?
My first cousin was one of my first teachers at school and at church.
Oh, I love that. Have you only taught in Chicago? I know I had you as a teacher in Chicago. Is Chicago the only place that you've taught? Did you teach in other states?
Yeah, only in the United States here.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been overseas.
She taught in Tennessee, in Memphis.
Before coming to Chicago? So you taught in Memphis before coming to Chicago?
What did I miss then?
I thought the United States.
Oh, did I?
No, I'm sorry. Sometimes I get excited and I start talking fast. I start talking fast.
I have not been overseas teaching.
Well, you should. You should. And so, so you said you met Mr. Turner before you all went to Wilberforce. Where did you all meet? Did you go to the same church, or were you from the same communities? Well,
he lived in Chicago and I lived in Memphis. And his first cousin, we graduated from high school together. And so he was always saying, kind of helped me find a man with a good heart.
Oh, so I take it Mr. Turner had a good heart.
Army. He was looking for a woman with a good heart. So two good hearts got together.
Oh.
I'd always wanted the family. He did too. Both of us wanted the same thing. And God gave it to us.
Wow. You know, when you used to, you designed a Christmas card that you sent to me one year, and it was you in it and your husband, and I didn't know that they were real people. Like I didn't think you designed that. I thought you found a black greeting card company someplace and just sent me that card. I didn't know that was your design, but that was really beautiful. But I remember you and your husband being in that picture.
One in there. I don't know where it is. I'll probably have to find it and give it to you.
Yeah, she had a couple of them.
Wow.
I used to try to draw a little bit, but I'm not too good at art.
No, Mrs. Turner, that was beautiful art. That was beautiful art. Did you grow up near your grandparents? Were you around your grandparents growing up?
Well, yeah, one grandparent, the one up there.
Oh, so
I didn't get a chance to.
right there.
I don't remember.
Oh, and who was that? Is that your grandmother? I'm sorry, I can't see it.
That's my father's mother.
Your father's mother? What was her name?
Vanny.
Vanny.
Vanny Stokes, and she married my father's.
Mary.
Oh.
She also was a centenarian. Tell him how old she lived to be.
Yeah, she was 105.
You all have great genes in your family. What? Oh my goodness. What was your grandmother? What was Miss Vanny like? Viney, I'm sorry. What was Miss Viney like?
She was a little short lady like myself. And always talking and laughing and telling about the slavery.
Really?
Yeah.
What did she know about slavery?
Well, she knew her father was white.
Tell him who her father was.
He told her.
Oh, who was
She looked like
Miss?
a white woman.
Did she? Who was her father?
What's the man's name?
Oh, Lord. Which is
He in Chicago.
Oh, Lord.
Hold on.
His name was Nathan Bedford Forrest.
Yeah.
The
He's
Ku Klux
actually
Klan
the father
father of the Ku Klux Klan. One of the Grand Wizards. The one they
first-
had a big conversation in Tennessee, removing his statue this past couple of summers when they were removing statues, and when they removed him, we just said, "Oh well, bye, Grandpa."
Oh my! Wait! Can y'all say his name again? I want to make sure we have this on the recording. We have the camera on this one too, Eli. I want to say so. So what's the name again?
His name is Nathan Bedford Forrest.
Forrest.
He was well. Actually, the story goes like this: there was a group of
This is getting
men-
better every minute. This is so worth the drive.
There was a group of men who had come back from the, I guess it would be the Civil War.
Okay.
But the story goes that there were several men who that his prowess as a general had
Was well noted.
well known. He was a vicious general, and so they wanted him to to be the chair or the beginning of all of this. And so they went and found
Oh, the
him,
KKK.
of the
Yes.
beginning of the Ku Klux Klan.
In
And so,
Tennessee, no.
and he,
Yes.
and the stories say that he wasn't as he wasn't enthusiastic about it because he didn't think very much of them, and so it continued and so forth. And so they made him the Grand Wizard. And one of the other reasons they wanted
Was
him
a
in there was
landowner.
because he was a landowner. He was a vicious slave owner, and he traded many things. And so they said, "Oh, this is perfect. He's perfect for this." So he went on and he did accept it. But as he got older, and there's a story they did on my grandmother, and I don't know whether we have the
tell that
clipping.
one. Yeah.
And so she was in a buggy. They had gone somewhere, and he asked her, he said, "Do you know who your father is?" And she said, "No, she didn't know." He said, "Well, I'm your daddy." She said, "Oh, okay, And so they said, well, as he got older, when he became, I guess, an old man, he started to think differently of his past. And so then he went and he said, he renounced his his title.
Wizardship or something.
He renounced.
Did
it
he
and
repent?
said, I don't know if he
don't know about
repented. I can't answer, but this is what it was said
Wow.
in the books that
So-
he pushed back from it and said, but he didn't push back from it because he felt that their mission was bad. He pushed back from it because he thought they were idiots. That was the real reason.
He was still a consummated slave owner.
Sure,
and,
sure.
And belief of
Yeah.
why he went to war in the Civil War. But in terms of the grandmother, Viney, she was very fair, had blonde hair. And, in those days, she was in the house playing with her little half brothers and siblings who were, Caucasian or full blood, whatever.
Right.
And the mother they had a garden party or something that they were given to having on the plantations then. And so whatever it is they were doing, she stood out a little bit as doing something well. And they said, "Oh, you're that child of yours, this, that, and the other." When the wife looked and saw whom they were speaking of, realized that wasn't one of hers. That was one of his, whatever.
Wow.
And so what they did is they took her outside and stripped her down, rubbed her down with lard, and sat her out in the heat of the day till she got nice and toasty looking.
They browned that child.
Yeah, well tanned. They tanned her up so that she could be in there, but even though she had blonde hair, she would be seen differently from the others. But wintertime, tan wears off.
Right,
And so
right.
These were the way things go because women at that period in time, regardless of your ethnicity, you were down on the totem pole.
Right.
And so this was some of the few things that she could control.
And so Grandma Viney, Miss Viney would talk about this.
Yes, and she would state, "Listen, I'm a little piece of leather," because the women tended to run a little on the short side, but I'm well put together.
Put together.
Yes.
I'm surprised she says it all the time.
Yeah, she'll tell you in a minute.
You say that, Mrs. Turner. Let me hear you say it. Let me hear you say it.
Anytime
He wants you to say
I want you to say it. You can say it now.
the way you be telling
if they
us.
look like they're doing something I don't expect them to do, I said, "Don't bother me. I'm a little piece of leather and I'm well put together."
Oh my goodness. And so your grandmother lived until she was 105
Right.
No, on that side. The other
on
side
on your father's side.
Yeah,
and,
that's fine.
and where was she from, ma'am? Did she live? She lived in Tennessee. She was in Tennessee.
Yeah, she's Tennessee.
Germantown.
Wow.
But she born in Mississippi. All of them came from down Mississippi.
What was some of the good advice that your grandmother gave you? Do you remember?
Let me see. She was always laughing and talking about what went on during slavery, you know. She and our friend, they lived in a little hut or something that the master gave them stay in. And sometimes they would go away and they get a chance to do a few things that they couldn't do when their master was there. So Grandma said, she said to her friend, I just want some meat. I want some meat. I'm hungry. And so she said, she was looking at the little pig down there around the feet. Said, my goodness, he sure look good. And she said, I think we can kill that pig. And look around, made sure that master wasn't going to be around right away. So she said, she caught the pig and it got this friend lady. Said, I'm going to get a knife and say, you hold the pig while I kill him, cut him, cab and stab him or whatever we kill it anyway. So she said she got that little pig and held his neck or whatnot so it wouldn't make too much noise. And so she said, now you pay attention now, I said, because I'm going to hit this pig's neck. And so the woman took the pig's two back legs and was holding it up. She went to hit the pig and hit the woman's hand, and she was too scared to make noise. And they skinned that pig and got it, washed it and cooked it and ate it and said they danced and sang. Said, what would the song say? That I can't hardly get that song together.
No, take your time.
I ain't gonna die. What is it? Ain't
Ain't
gonna
gonna
die
let it
no
go?
more.
Oh.
I'm gonna die before I be a slave.
Oh, I know that song. Before I be a slave, I'll be dead in my
Go
grave.
to heaven and be
with my Lord.
with my Lord.
And she ate that swine. They had an old fashioned barbecue outside.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
They never got found out, I understand. So.
No, I guess not. I should admit I didn't remember all of it.
Mrs. Turner, this may not be a fair question, but I'm going to ask it. You had black teachers growing up, and I know that helped you become an educator. Did we lose anything by integrating schools and having white teachers with black children?
I wouldn't.
She said when
say
she got older, she did.
I wouldn't say we lost any. We did lose some things. We didn't lose everything, though. The difference seemingly between a white teacher and a black teacher, the black teacher would be a little bit, more closer to you and talk to a little different language that you wasn't too well acquainted with or whatnot. But you couldn't really express exactly how different they were to you. Because I got along with all of them.
You did.
I had been taught at home. We didn't have no teacher writing a letter about anything you did. What teacher said do, that's what you did.
Yes.
Now it really is getting first 8th grade and 12th grade. Things were a little bit different.
Do you think black students listen to black teachers more than they listen to white teachers?
Some of them do, maybe. Not anybody listen to all of them. But I think what you do, I can't think of the opinion, is that students listen more to black teachers, but I'm not too sure about that. It all depends on what the teacher, how the teacher treats them and everything.
Sure.
They don't get as close to them sometimes.
Sure. When you were my first grade teacher, all the students were black.
Amen.
When I moved to Wisconsin, there was only one other black student in my class. His name was Reggie Darnell. The teacher was white. The principal was white. All the kids were white. And they started talking about slavery. And I don't remember talking about that in your class. You told me I could be a president. You talked to me about science. You told me how to put that cup in that water with that paper in it. You carved that pumpkin. But I sat in a class with all white students. And I've had good white teachers, so this is not trying to bash them. But my experience was different. I didn't feel the same way in Mrs. Barbara Carl's class as I did in your class, because you reminded me of my mother. You reminded me of my grandmother, people I respected. But I looked around that classroom at Delano and had kids who looked like me. Wisconsin felt like a whole another world. And we're still struggling. In our educational system, we need a whole bunch of teachers like you, mothers and grandmother types who are with the kids, because we listened, we respected you, but we also believe that you cared about us. You didn't even have to say it. That's why I remember you. And when I called Hynita Parker, we called her Nene. We're still friends on Facebook. She was in your first grade class too, because me and Nene were in Head Start, kindergarten, and first grade together. She wanted to come and see you too when I told her I was going to connect with Mrs. Turner, but there was something that we related to. White students get to always see white teachers. But as a black student, in my life after I left your classroom, that was the last black teacher I had for a long time. In fact, between your class and high school, I might have only had 3 black teachers in my whole life. And when I studied African American history at the university, the department chair was a white man. So I'm glad that I had that influence when I was really young to be in your class, because I remember being afraid of Mrs. Yeagle. She was the kindergarten teacher. She was white with all black class. I was scared of you, but that's for a different reason. because I knew you didn't play. And back in those days, teachers could paddle. Like, you didn't have a paddle, but you had like that hall. I remember one day this girl named Bridget did something wrong, and you took in that closet. I don't know. Y'all might want to edit this out, but this was the 1960s, so teachers could do that.
We had taught school when we had that kind of autonomy.
It was like that kind of
and
paddle.
I had that kind of autonomy in a mixed class.
You did.
Yes.
You took. She took Bridget in that broom closet. I'm telling you. When Bridget came out, it's like she'd been to the moaning bench. She had a difference. When Bridget came out, she was like this. The old saints used to sing a song. I didn't have no doubt. I didn't have no doubt when I rose. Bridget rose out that broom closet. But I remember, Mrs. Turner, you were walking down the aisle with that. It was like a hall pass. It wasn't a paddle. It was a hall pass. And my knee was in the aisle. And you didn't hit it. You just you pushed my knee back in under my desk. I don't know if you had a military background, but you didn't want any feet, you didn't want any legs in that aisle. I remember you just sort of tapped my leg a little bit, and I pulled that leg back under that desk.
A ruler, 12 inches ruler.
It was a ruler, yes, yes. And so I just wondering about your perspective of that. And Mrs. Carls was a nice teacher, but after I left your class, it was the first time that I ever felt like a teacher really knew me or understood me until Mrs. Bernard was my teacher in 4th grade, and I still keep in touch with her. I got a thing about keeping in touch. But you were part of a group of teachers, and it seemed like it was your call. It wasn't just a job.
That's right.
But it felt like it was a call from God.
It was. Definitely.
That is really
I couldn't
beautiful.
stand nobody to mistreat anybody's children. Nobody.
You know,
just
when
like my own children, the teacher would come to me and tell me, they come to me just as big and lay up their head on my knee or whatnot.
Oh my goodness!
Miss Turner, I ain't never seen a teacher like you before. The mother would come in and say that.
Oh my goodness!
They come out, I want them to be in your room. And one said, I don't want them to be in there. So Miss Turner said, 'cause you don't hit him hard enough.
Well, my cousin John is my same age, and my mother tried to get him in your class. I can't think of what his teacher's name was. And I'm just recounting the story. My podcast is called Black Like Me, so I can tell the truth on it. She was a white teacher, but my mother and her sister, my Aunt Ada, shared an apartment down on Hamlin and Wilcox. And my aunt had the front room and a bedroom, and we had the back. And John was real quiet, and the family couldn't figure out what happened. why he was so quiet. And I went and asked him, and he told me the teacher called him stupid in front of the whole class. And John struggled for years after that. I mean, he went to college, became a social worker. He's retired. He's doing well. But you wouldn't have thought of ever calling a child stupid. And if you thought they weren't right, you take them in that broom closet like you took that coat room, wherever that was, you took Bridget when she came out renewed. But, and again, my point of this is I'm not saying that all teachers do that. I have great teachers. That, one of my favorite teachers is a white male, so I'm keeping in touch with them. But I'm just saying, for someone who left your classroom and moved to Wisconsin it was a different world. I felt like the Lord knew I needed somebody like you in my life for first grade, because no one said anything, but I started to question, was I as smart as the white students? But for my entire life, I remember you writing on the board that Alexander is going to become the president of the United States. And at your 100th birthday celebration, when I got up to say some remarks, you actually stood up and said that. I almost fainted because I couldn't believe you remembered that. But I've carried that in my head and my heart my entire life. So that when I got to places and I didn't think I could do something, I wasn't sharp enough to do something, I remember really early on having a teacher who believed in me. I run 4 companies right now. I've got about 40 employees across those companies, including Eli, and my name is on their paychecks. I mean, these are companies I've started. I'm not the president of the United States, but I'm the president of 4 companies, and so I was the president. but that's something that you called out, and I know y'all have heard me say that, but I don't think what you all have heard is how much that carried me. It's one thing to have a teacher say, "Oh, that's cute. Yeah, you're gonna be the president," and really the way it went down was, Mrs. Turner, you would ask us to stand up. We'd have to write what the weather was, because you were teaching us penmanship. So we would have to.
Primary teacher. See, I'm middle school. And
The
I have students that have come back. When I retired, I had a couple of students that came, and because I was multi-ethnic, I had an African American student that remembers me and came, and Caucasian girl. Also.
They would come back and see that's
important. Yeah, they came, and they're working now in education, whatever. He's a professor, and she's a current teacher. And when she started student teaching, she came to one of the schools that we had me for 8th grade, and I said, "Oh, babe," because when they graduated 8th grade, they had a job. I had them get the workers permit, and that's it. So you just got to be motivated. But it's good that y'all the primary. Because see, Mommy will tell you the story that she would take, because her teaching would go during the summer, and I would give her a break because her program, and I'd go in there and teach for a week and let her tell you about, they were laying their heads on her lap and whatever. Now here you put a middle school upper teacher in there with the babies, and I said, "Oh, they spilled something on the table. Well, go on over and get the cloth." Yeah, and there's some on the floor. Maybe you need to get the mop. Mommy came back. She said, "You grew them all up. You took all the cute out of them."
Oh my goodness!
But they were competent.
Yes, they were. That is important. Why support Black Like Me podcast? There are very few places where Black activists and innovators can listen to and hear someone so aptly and culturally appropriately voice their concerns and dreams and aspirations and fears and illnesses and cultural commonalities. Equally, there are so few places where concerned non-Black thinkers and feelers, readers and watchers, lovers of culture, stalwarts of racial justice and harmony can go to learn, lean in, and to be a quiet fly on the wall in Black spaces and experience deep personal transformation through listening to honest Black people's truth. Black Like Me podcast is that for so many people in this nation and around the world. Now, while your financial support beginning at as little as $2 a month will get you access to pre-released information, updates, conversations, insights, and exclusive events, your support also affords us the opportunity to expand the quality and reach of our excellent programming in thoughtful and authentic ways to more and more people. And more importantly, white people need to stop trying to get free shit from Black people. All right. Seriously, your financial support is a vote of confidence, and it's an enabler of vision and innovation. So why not click that link today and join the movement? I want to thank you in advance for your support and your partnership. Hold on, I got some questions for you that my sister said be sure to ask Mrs. Turner, because she's doing some things where she is studying Black women in the 80s and 90s. And so she wanted me to ask you one word that would describe your childhood as a Black girl.
As a Black girl, I was always trying to find out things about everything I didn't understand. And the people got to the place and said, well, you need to just listen. Because when they quit telling me so many things, then I wasn't getting as much as I wanted, and I'd be looking further, listening to people to hear what they had to say. Because they could tell me things that I had wanted to know, and I didn't know how to ask for it.
So you had a hunger for knowledge.
Your word would be curious.
Curious. Laleda is curious.
Very curious.
Even unto now.
Even
when you leave here, she will have questions.
Will she
So
really?
yes, she will. So I'm type A, so I'm very observant. But she will have.
She
questions.
will have
She
questions.
is always.
She's the grandma.
Yeah.
But
She is eternally curious.
Yes.
and I just have to say this just while I'm on film, Mrs. Turner, you're 102 years old. You don't have a single wrinkle. Have you had plastic surgery?
No.
I know she had. I'm being funny. But those young pictures, Mrs. Turner, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but you were as cute as you needed to be. Your husband was lucky. When I look at those pictures, when you're sitting on that table at your graduation from Wilberforce, Mrs. Turner, you was a fox.
No, like, come on.
I mean, in a godly way. Not you weren't fast, but but you were just. I'm just telling you, and you're still beautiful.
Listen, we could show you.
She,
Really,
she
the
modeled.
pandemic shut her down, but Mommy is a runway model. Here in the local area, we are part of Foster Senior Club, and they have an annual fashion show. But there are other organizations that have various.
She's a runway model.
She is.
Well, you know,
And
her
so
party, she had them clear heels on. I remember them those little clear. Like I was looking for the goldfish.
No,
No.
Weren't they clear? No, they were just beautiful. But I'm just saying,
That's the
at her 100th birthday party, she's wearing heels. Yeah, acrylic.
Yeah. I'd have to look that. Well, I'll show you some of her pictures.
I started to say, we'll look in here because this is one of her nieces. You
that's
you might
her.
know her. She's an actress. She was on what's it?
Greenleaf.
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 I didn't see Greenleaf.
Well, she
Okay.
It was too close to home, but she was on Greenleaf.
She
yeah,
was
she's
the
one playing
star
the
of
Grace.
Greenleaf, and she's now on.
FBI.
In Canada.
What's it called?
She's in Canada doing something.
Well, she's in Canada right now, but she's on.
But that's your niece?
Yeah, Merle Dandridge. That's her niece.
That is wonderful.
And we have
No, her grandniece. That's
Her
the
grandniece.
grandniece.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The grandniece.
yeah, because Andrew
Of the
is
father's
your
mouth.
nephew.
Nephew.
Her dad.
Mrs. Turner, the other question is there a historic event that you lived through that impacted you real deeply? Was it Martin Luther King's death? Was it Obama's election? Can you just think of some historic event that you lived through that really shaped
I
you?
lived through what was that called on Comiskey when they burned down all the houses
Oh, the riots.
and we had to get
After
out in the
Martin Luther
street.
King.
Oh, in '68, those '68 riots.
Yeah,
After Martin
yeah,
Luther King.
that.
I can remember Madison and Pulaski
that was
being
that
on
Madison
fire.
thing.
Three Sisters, all those places went up in flames.
Yeah, up in fire. You'd be scared to stay in the house and scared to be out. It was tough.
Do you remember, Mrs. Turner? They sent us home from school when Dr. King
Everything.
died. He was in '68, so I was in kindergarten. I wasn't in your class yet, but they sent us home, and then that night I remember seeing the riots. We had a blackout in our building. All the lights went out. Our building
Yeah.
went completely dark.
They targeted the whole neighborhood. we had soldiers standing in front of our door.
Yeah.
National Guard. I
Riding
guess.
past the
Really?
house.
Yeah. I
On a
remember looking
truck.
out the window, and when the guy had the gun, and he said, "Who goes there?" I was like, "That's a kid."
Do you remember when you were old enough, or when you could legally vote? Do you remember voting for the first time?
Oh, I don't exactly remember. But I think it was about 20.
Do you remember? Do you remember your parents not being able to vote? Do you remember when black people were not able to vote? Without
Seeing
danger.
them go to vote, I don't think they could. I do remember. I did hear them talking about voting that much in the house.
What did you like most about attending Wilberforce College?
And Wilberforce College.
What did you enjoy most about going to school there? Because you went to Lemoyne and Lane, but I'm just curious what you liked most about Wilberforce. That's so historic.
Wilberforce was nice. My husband was a minister, and we were all raised at church. He was preaching, and what was that you brought in there? Now,
His appointment.
he made the highest thing.
Oh, he did. He came out. She came out.
She was summa cum laude.
Oh, that was him,
He
but
came out magna
Magna
cum
cum
laude.
laude.
Wow.
And,
So you all couldn't help but be educators.
Yeah,
Or at least attentive.
Yeah.
but
He
then-
was an elder, and,
Oh, an
and
AME
finally,
itinerant elder.
Itinerant elder.
Yeah.
Oh, his
He sure was. Oh, and in the AME church.
yeah, that's right.
In the AME
In the
church. You know, a lot of people, even in some of our school districts, question if our black students can really learn. Sometimes, again, this is not everywhere, but where I live, there's a low expectation that black students can do well. And
Is it just black, or is it black and brown?
well, they say black and brown, but the statistics are showing that the brown students are really doing better than the black students.
There's nobody to, and
Parental
I went
support.
to Delano, and then I went
She
out
taught
to, yeah, I did. And then I came out here to Evanston. And at the time when I came out here to Evanston, that was, I guess you would say, the time when, there was a lot of integration. And so when I came back to Delano, one of the things that, one of the reasons why our students, initially they weren't, but as we started getting more information and as I started to delve more into code switching, that's actually that's what you were talking about earlier with her having that kind of cultural connection. But what happens with a lot of our students is that it's not that they can't learn, but it's that there's nobody actually translating for them.
That's yes.
And that translation is what
That's what I
we
was
call
getting at,
code
switching.
switching. And it's, you don't have it as much to a certain extent for the little brown children because, we expect and anticipate that they may not necessarily speak the language. But the expectation is that if you have been in America all your life that you speak the same language. Although when you come into the homes and so forth, that we don't speak
different.
the same language. Something as simple as you can talk to a black child, and depending upon where you are in America, things are not the same.
Right.
I can say, you can come and say, oh, well, do you have a dishcloth? And you got a black child who might look at you and be like, a dishcloth? What are you talking about, a dishcloth? And somebody said, girl, give him the dish rag. Oh, here. And it's something just that
Right.
simple that. Now, that means that the communication is insane. That means that
difference.
if you're talking about this and I have no visual image, I have no auditory image for what you're talking about, that means I spend a lot of time in that environment completely oblivious because I don't know what you're talking about.
That's
Then
what's
you put
happening
on-
to our
The
students.
pail and the
and
bucket.
then you turn
Yes.
around and you
That's it,
put
the pail and
that
the bucket.
same child in a classroom with a teacher who has had to they've had to do that
Navigate.
divide. It's that whole idea that we stand on the backs of people like Mom, who that's
Yes.
what they taught you. They said, well, you know, a child can't reach for something that you don't put in front of them. So if you don't put in front of them, you know, and we got bad by saying all children have to be doctors and lawyers, and then we started saying, okay, wait a minute, hold on, do you have to be a doctor or lawyer? No, you know what? You can be anything that you want to be.
But you know what,
I
Miss
wanna
Mona?
do something.
That's what
I
I
wanna
think I was
see
trying to
something.
get at with Mrs. Turner. We know how to pull them over. Like you said, baby, come over here and sit right here. I think what happens is when people don't know that they can overcome that. Like we know that people can change. And so we bring them closer. But when teachers who don't culturally understand kids see that if they push them away, they put them in special spaces, special corners, and not let them integrate with the class, that becomes difficult. I knew I was smart as a kid. My mother made sure I could spell my name, I could read when I started school, but I did not question my intelligence until I moved to Wisconsin, and the teachers didn't know how to code switch.
I mean, that's a very important.
No one said I was inferior. Something happened, and I just thought
You never connected.
I never connected.
If you don't connect, I mean, as a teacher, some teachers, you know, they work very hard. I coached for a long time, and I used to tell my teachers, you don't necessarily have to reach out to each kid, but a child should understand that you are open and available. Because children, this is what they do. They reach. And if they reach, if there's no place for them to go to, what happens is after a while, or if they reach and you do this, then after a while, they're like, okay, there's no connection here. But if you're open, then that means when I reach and I connect. And when I connect with you here, then that means that wherever I'm going, you're going with me.
No, you all are giving us some excellent background, but it's just so important for me to stress how well my interaction with you set me up for life by giving me a good sense of confidence.
God, he deserves it, not me.
Oh, well, I thank God for you.
Thank you.
You know, when I came to your 100th birthday celebration, I remember, Miss Mona, you said you had been trying to reach out to me. You had called my office, and so I only had like 2 weeks notice, but I got that. Said, I'm coming. So, Mrs. Turner, when I went to your birthday cake table, you know, they had a beautiful puzzle with you in it and then the cake. My eyes fell on this, and I said, man, that young man looks familiar. Honestly, I didn't know that this was my picture. And I saw my name on it. I thought, what is that doing here? I finished high school in 1981. I could not believe that you had saved a poem I wrote you and that I sent you my senior picture, and that you kept it and had it at the table. But I made me want to cry at that table. But it was entitled A Real Teacher. And I'll read this later on in the show. They'll get a chance to hear. But I love this last line. It says, my favorite teacher can't forget her students, for she sees each one as a gem. But the credit to her is the fact that she is always remembered by them. So how do you feel knowing that these young people remember you and see you as a hero?
You feel good because you reach your goal. That's what you're trying to get over to them and let them pass it on over to somebody else.
Yes. But you know, when I think of the average size of a church in America, in the world, the average church size in the world is less than 100 people. We think of mega churches, but the average size of the world church is 100 people. So many pastors will often not touch more than 100 people in their entire ministry. You've touched thousands and thousands. You have touched more people than most pastors do in their entire ministry. And you did that from a classroom with young kids putting their heads on your lap and going to sleep, or, you know, getting cookies and chocolate milk. I remember the chocolate milk too. I remember the cookies and the chocolate milk. We didn't have enough of that when I moved to Wisconsin. But I that's just got to be such a good feeling to know that people have grown up to do wonderful things in the world, and they see that you're part of their story and helping us get there. It's a fantastic ministry and a fantastic work, and I think teachers don't receive enough credit. They certainly don't receive enough pay.
Amen.
But I'm just one of the many students who you've touched and encouraged. But most importantly, you saw us. That really is the magic, the secret sauce, Mrs. Turner. We felt you saw us in that classroom in a world that was still trying to see us. I mean, in the 1960s, King had just been killed. Civil rights, acts were still getting into place. Voter Registration Act was just ratified in '65. It was a turbulent world, and you helped to prepare black students to become leaders, not just black leaders, but to become leaders in the world. And we didn't know at that point how the world was going to see us.
Praise the Lord.
But you helped us get there. And I just for all the students who were in your classroom and in classrooms of great teachers like yourself, I want you to know how much I appreciate you, how much we appreciate you.
God bless you to keep on going.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I have to keep up with you. You're going to be 103 this year, and you still modeling and talking and communicating on the computer and doing podcasts, interviews.
So I can keep walking.
Oh, my goodness. Yes. That's going to happen. That's going to happen. Well, I think my last question is, what's the most important lesson? If you could just give one lesson to every school teacher, if every school teacher in the world got on the computer and saw me and you talking, what would you want to say to school teachers to make them better, to make them the best teacher they could be?
I want them to say, treat everybody, children and everybody, you love them. Love is the top thing.
So make sure that they love.
Yeah,
that
for
they
the
love.
whole world.
You know what? That's a mic drop right there. That's a soft mic drop. Mrs. Turner, I really appreciate you and Miss Mona, Miss Deborah, letting me and my crew come in your home and talk with you. I've been thinking about this for years, and this is a gift to me to be able to sit down and talk with you and to thank you and to hear a little bit more about your life. So thank you for this time.
God bless you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I can only just say God bless you. Put you on top.
Wow.
Black like me. Black like me.
Wow, I really enjoyed today's conversation, and I know that you did too. You know, with each episode, I challenge my listeners to do a number of things: to lean in, to learn, to reflect, to share, to donate, but more importantly, to act on what has inspired you in today's episode. You know, the benefit of being around for 8 seasons is that people constantly stop me and tell me how much they love the show, and they even give me ideas and suggestions about Black Icebreakers. But you know, I couldn't have pulled this off alone. So let me take a moment so that I can acknowledge and thank my crew. Engineers and producers, Jeremy and Eli. Also a member of my creative team is Jakisha. The music was produced by Corey Saffold, and Marcus Fleming is on vocals. And of course, you, our Patreon supporters, and all of our listeners, thank you. To everyone who listens to this podcast and you decide to share it with someone who needs it, to everyone who listens and then reposts it on your own social media accounts, to everyone who hears something that moves them to act differently, act better, and to everyone who leans in to understand Black life more honestly, thank you.
Black like me.